Well, thank you, thank you. So today I'm going to be giving a talk about a product that we developed at Canberra University and going from the beginning life cycle through the end. Isn't something of particular interest to me. My life has been spent in product development. My professional life has been predominantly working for developing commercial software for engineers and geoscientists to discover and develop oil and gas properties. And so I spent about 30 years in that area and then have now been working with Canberra University for a while. And also where we develop products, or products in this case are training materials. So give you a little bit of that background, where we're going. I've been doing Agile for a while, being involved in it, and I have an issue with my screen that keeps. Okay. So when we look at product development and product pipelines, what does your product, how many people here are actively involved in developing products where they're customer facing? Not internal products, but customer facing products. All right, quite a bit, that's great. That's love to see that. And I think that's one of the things that's particularly interesting. I mean, a lot of people in the Agile community are not developing products, and they're stuck in in a different way, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with internal products, and in fact, that's great. And there's nothing wrong actually with calling something a project. I have no issue about, the reality is there are projects that are not products. That's totally fine. But product development to me, and particularly if it's for commercial delivery, where you have customer-facing issues, customer-facing products, it has a different perspective. It has something that's very important because you've got to be reaching out. Sometimes you don't know even who those customers are, and so you've got to get feedback when you don't necessarily know who they are. So in pulling that information together and getting that feedback together, it's a particularly interesting challenge. So those of you that are in product development, what does your pipeline, your product pipeline look like? So not just your product itself, but how do you deciding which products to deliver and how do they work through your pipeline? Does it look like this, something like this? So this is what might call an idealized pipeline. You know, we're going from a concept through feasibility development and release, right? So how many have a pipeline that looks sort of like this? Two, yeah, okay. I mean, this is an idealized one. And I think the fact that it's linear and showing it people might think, oh, well, that looks like a waterfall, right? It's not necessarily a waterfall, right? It's just these are steps of things that you might go through in coming up with stages you're looking at where you're discovering knowledge. Now, it doesn't have to look like this, but unfortunately, a lot of product pipelines look like this. Right? Just shove the next log down, right? So, I mean, I see a lot of pipelines that look like this. You know, a lot of pipelines look like traffic in Bangalore. You know, they're just going crazy, whatever. You know. I had the privilege of taking a class from Rebecca Henderson. She's a professor at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. You might have heard of it. I think there's even an MIT campus in Bangalore. Found out about. Great place. She works in the business side. And so one of the things she does when she teaches her classes is she asks the audience to draw what their pipeline looks like. What does their product pipeline look like? And these are they're just fun examples. And it's a good exercise to do internally. What does your current pipeline look like, right? And you always get these interesting dynamics. So here, you know, it looks like a beginning funnel. That's not too bad. But what happens after it gets into the funnel is it just sort of circulates around, you know, a couple of fans blowing one direction. You've always got to have your senior management injector in here, right? Drop those things in randomly. You know, you've got some marketing inputs, and of course, you've also got to have reorganizations every once in a while. You know, those are part of business, and then something drips out at the other end. So you know, you get to be. It's a good, fun, creative to actually look at what do you actually do now. Here's another one I like. You know, you got a number of different inputs coming in. Quality control has a voice, but it doesn't go anywhere. You roll some dice and something happens, you know, it goes around in a labyrinth, you know. Something comes out, it gets thrown in the dumpster and immediately recycled back into strategic planning. You You know, unfortunately, these are, I mean, they're fun, they're overstated perhaps, but you know, these are the types of things we commonly see because they don't have a structure to any sort of pipeline. So having a slight, you know, you don't want to have an overly constrained structure, but having some degree of structure is actually pretty useful. Sometimes their pipeline looks like this. It sort of gets to the management injector category.
We want this and that. We demand a share in that and most of that, some of this and fucking all of that. Less of that and more of this and fucking plenty of this. Another thing, we want it now. I want it yesterday. I want fucking more tomorrow. And the demands will all be changed then. So fucking stay away.
So we have, you know, the management injectors like that. We need more and more and more. So how did, and we hope your pipeline doesn't look like this. I got inspired by Scott's talk a little bit. Crap out. Yeah. So what were we trying to do with our pipeline? So this is like sort of our general perspective is we had some sort of problem hypothesis that we wanted to look at with a bunch of ideas coming in, do some market analysis, do some problem validation, some solution validation, and solution development, and finally deploy our product. So let's look at this sort of as we go through step by step. So what were some of the ideas we had? So we have a number of different products on the market already, and we're looking at what do we do next? Well, maybe we pursue advanced training for our alumni. We have a lot of passionate alumni. These are people who are really excited about Kanban, about Kanban products, and there's a lot of material we have that we could add for them. So this was one potential idea we had. Another idea, potentially we could focus growth outside of IT and software. We've had some good successes outside of IT and software. Maybe we design a product specifically to target that. Maybe we clean up, people are, you know, we've had some success improving Scrum. Maybe we really focus on cleaning up those challenges that we see with Scrum stalling or Scrum failing. And the last one was potentially maybe really targeting product managers. Is that an area we really want to go after? After evaluating these ideas, the one that really started to resonate the most with us was from perspective of problem identification and also our ability to help. We thought there's a big opportunity in the Scrum world. So let's look at that a little bit deeper. We start with pain, right? So that's one of the things you look at is when are people motivated to buy your product or whatever your product is designed to do, your product or solution. There needs to be something that they want. It's the concept of jobs to be done. You're probably familiar with. What job is your product doing, right? And that job is usually to remove some pain or to create some, it's either it can be a pain or it can be some overjoy, right? So, you know, it's the flip side of it. But usually it's pain. Usually there's something that's hurting that motivates someone who says, I need something better. Right? And so that's where we're going to start with pain. Where are the pains we were seeing? Well, when you look at Scrum implementations, you can sort of categorize them. There's some people out there that are doing awesome, great. You know, if they're doing awesome, they probably have discovered much of what we're going to try to teach them anyway. They're continuing to get better. And so this is probably not a group we're going to go after that hard. But there are a number of people where Scrum has helped a bit. They haven't gotten better. They've stalled out. That's an opportunity, perhaps. Scrum's been a disaster. That's absolutely an opportunity, unless they just won't even talk to anybody. And the other one is not really giving them any benefit. All of these are potential. And so we look, you know, and so you look at the perspective. Jeff Sutherland, the founder, one of the co-founders of Scrum, has stated that 58% of Scrum implementations are late, over budget, with unhappy customers. So people say, well, where's the source of that? I think the source of it is from a Standish report. But actually, from a marketing and product perspective, it doesn't matter. Because this is what we call marketing fact. He said it. So Jeff said this, so we can use it, right? And it's probably very representative of the real problems out there. Because we see them, and we've seen other reports showing something similar. So we know there's pain. So that's a good start. That's a good starting point. You start with the pain. The other thing we start looking at is are people amenable to our solution, right? And so this is from the 2019 Scrum Master Trends that Scrum.org ran. 81% of people that were doing Scrum thought they were using Kanban. Okay, now probably all they're doing is using the Kanban board in Jira, but that's actually okay. We now have permission, based on this, to go and actually talk about Kanban in places where frequently we were told you can't, don't even mention the word Kanban. So this gives us the thought that yes, we can go after this market effectively, and we can try to work with Scrum teams to make them better. So another source of information was a survey that we ran, State of Kanban. So we did the State of Kanban a couple of different times. And a couple of things that were useful for us to see was of people, we asked people where did they, that had been using Kanban, where did they start, okay? So 57% said they had started from Scrum, but 7% from SAFe, a few from XP. And so these are all possibilities of customers we know have come from a place we're trying to target. So we're already hitting some of them, but we can even hit them harder. And the other thing that was important is that of the respondents, 87% had indicated that the Kanban method was more effective than prior ways of working. So we've already got testimonials. We've got people saying, we were using this is working better. That's a great opportunity for us. So this looks like a pretty good place to start. So we've got the things that are formulating around pain and solution that can go together and provide a solution to the problems that they're having. Now, what are some of the headwinds we might face? And one of them is the positioning. How has Kanban been positioned in the market? How has Scrum been positioned in the market? And what does that work? How does that work? So from a Scrum lens, if you got Scrum glasses on, you might think that Scrum is a framework, so Kanban must also be a framework, which means maybe I have to swap one for the other. Right? So this is a feeling like that this could be something we need to work around. We have this other one that Scrum is for products and Kanban is for operations. Very common. It's extremely common in India, from what I understand. That this is, in fact, someone told me if this was on an exam and you didn't say that, you would be wrong. That's a big hurdle for us because that's just not true. Kanban is a great tool for developing products. I've been using Kanban to develop products for many, many years. And the only part about that's true is that trying to use Scrum for operations is stupidity. Right? It just doesn't work. I've never seen anyone be particularly successful trying to use Scrum for operations because operations don't have predictable work. You're going to have unpredictable work all the time. The other element we have is Kanban's just a board. That's all there is to it. So I'm already using Kanban. So this is the hurdles we have from the Scrum side. But we also have hurdles from our own side, from our own Kanban community. Our own Kanban community holds up their nose and says, Scrum sucks, right? So this is one of the challenges we have inside, right? We have to work through that. And not everybody, but there's enough of that voice out there that has been antagonistic towards Scrum. We're better than you type of thing. That's something we had to overcome. Also losers, right? If you haven't figured out Kanban, you're not really on the program. Yeah, but one of our values is respect. Right? So how is it that we're going that direction? And so we have to do a little bit of massaging within our own community to try to really get back to where we hold that as respect. And as well, one of our values is start with what you do now. So given that, what do we do? Well, the other element here is that you'll see these charts all out over there, right? What is Scrum? What is Kanban? What is Scrumban? All of them are from a Scrum lens. And all of them are wrong, wrong, and wronger. Because this comparison just doesn't make any sense. This is the assumption is that Kanban and Scrumban are frameworks of some sort because Scrum is a framework, so therefore Scrum and Kanban should also be a framework. But it's just not true. Kanban is a management method for improving knowledge work. It's not something you swap in or swap out. It's something you add to what you do today. So it's not a framework. It's not just a board. It's not something you install. It's not a transformation. Any Kanban versus Scrum comparison makes no sense because they're two different things. They're not, you know, Scrum is a process framework. It's an intentionally incomplete process framework. You do this, plus you do other stuff. Now, that also opens up, if it's an incomplete framework, means you can add stuff. Well, Kanban's something you can add, so it's an opportunity. You have to position it right. In positioning it, Kanban is a management method for improving the delivery of knowledge work using evolutionary change. And while not a transformation, it can be quite transformational. We can make small changes and have gotten some substantial results in 90 days, sometimes as much as four times improvement in lead time, 4 times improvement in throughput from some very simple things. Usually it's about getting rid of the cars on the road. It's about reducing your work in progress, and amazing things can happen once you actually free up the road to be able to drive. But Kanban is an unframework. It's not the same thing. It's an approach that you can add on top of what you have. So if you start with what you do now and what you do is Scrum today, that means we can add Kanban to it. And we can add Kanban parts and practices and principles and improve what you do today. So we can make it better. So we started looking at market analysis as well. So this is starting to formulate, well, how big is that market? Is it a market that's really attractive? Well, the market up until, this was up through 2020, just collecting data that's publicly available. You can pretty much look at it and say there's somewhere between 2.5 million certified Scrum Master, or this is certificates that have been sold. You could probably figure that there's a number, maybe even double that to figure out how many people have been trained in Scrum that not necessarily certified. There's a lot of uncertified training as well. And this market was continuing to grow. Now, it has definitely slowed down and definitely started to shrink, right, in terms of new sales in the last 2 years. But at the time we were looking at this, there was enough growth to say this is a substantial market that we could go after, especially compared to our own. We're very proud of what training we have done, but our numbers are relatively small compared to these. So that was one of the reasons going after our alumni was a small group. So we said, let's really try to focus on this and grow our market to reach out to this market that's available. Oops. Okay, so our hypothesis is, we then took that market and we segmented it a little bit more. And we said, well, do they already have some agile process in motion, agile activity in motion, or not agile yet? And are they inside IT, or are they outside IT? So those outside of IT, but having something going, we figured that these are probably the early adopters. They're probably pretty satisfied with what they're doing. These are the ones we know about, right? They're seeing some benefit. These may be hard for us to reach. They're probably relatively satisfied already. So it's something we're going to continue to watch, but it may not be who we really target. Those outside of IT and also not doing anything agile, we call these oblivious. They don't necessarily know they need anything, right? So while it may be a huge untapped market, and we're having successes in, definitely having a considerable success in the outside IT, it may not be an easy market for us to target, right? Because they may not know that they have their problem may not be urgent to them. Right? In IT, we know we have problems because everyone's beating up on IT. They don't understand it. But they don't beat up on the lawyers because if they beat up on the lawyers will sue them. Right? So, or they'll not. So the accountants and other places where we have seen some success, they don't necessarily have the urgency. If they're not doing anything agile yet and inside IT, they're laggards, they're probably not going to go looking around for something that looks, they're likely going to jump on safe because safe sounds safe to them. That's exactly what they want. They won't necessarily get any improvement, and 18 months later they'll regret it, but that's what they'll do, right? Because that's what they think they need. They don't want accountability, right? If they go anywhere, they're going to go safe. So here it goes into the last category. We'll call them the Scrummer boys, and it is a predominantly male. I mean, one of the good things about agility is it's probably more women, which is fantastic. But we called them the Scrummer boys just as a name. Rhymes with drummer boy, you know. And this is the place where we've got pain, we've got a lot of them, and we think, we've got unhappy customers, let's go after them, right? This is our target. So a real focus here, I mean, what does it mean? It means we can aggressively pursue position in Kanban as a way to improve the existing Scrum market without threatening the Scrum practitioner's identity. This is something that's very key to the Kanban method. We don't threaten, we try not to threaten your identity either as a Scrum organization or as a Scrum practitioner. Instead, what we do is we try to make you a better version of that. We try to make you a better Scrum practitioner, a better Scrum organization. And we know we can do that. Now, we may give you the tools that allow you to totally break away from Scrum. Right? Those are only tools. You choose yourself whether you want to stay within the Scrum framework or break away from it. Right? So this is our target. We're going to really go after that market. So, again, we've sort of got that. Now we want to go a little deeper. So this is our next phase, going into deeper analysis. We started doing some more customer surveys. We know there's pain, but we need to know what kind of pain. And in order to do this, we have to avoid one of the product management traps. And I like this example. So this is an example of airplanes. The British were doing analysis of the airplanes that had come back from Germany to figure out how could they reinforce them properly so that they would save more lives. And there's examples here. They started looking and they said, oh, well, this is where we're being hit. Maybe we should be reinforcing those areas where we're being hit. And a Hungarian mathematician said, you've got the wrong context. You need to remember that these are the planes that came back. The ones that got shot down were the ones that got hit where there's no bullet holes here. So context is key when you're asking questions. One of the things that I see that is a big product management trap, and I got caught in this when I was product manager, is who do you go ask when you're looking for information? You go to the easy place, which is your existing customers. If you ask your existing customers, what information do you learn about the people you're not currently selling to? Very little, right? You already know your existing customers. They're happy with your product. If you want to expand your market, you want to talk to people that you're not currently talking to. So you've got to get outside the box. And so that's what we did. Our easy answer is, because we have a lot of trainers out there, would be to ask our trainers. But that's not what we pulled back from that and said, no, we're going to try to reach people we don't normally reach. We're going to try to reach actual Scrum practitioners that are not necessarily involved in Kanban now. And so we did that. We reached out and did a number of surveys, and we got a large array of items. But two things really struck us as areas that were problems. One is, how do I improve flow and predictability? Lots of challenges in that area. And even bigger problem is, how do I deal with resistance? Right? You see this one, this resistance. Resistance being a very large challenge. So we said, these are good, because these are sort of core of the Kanban method. So we're looking at problems that we have really, really good solutions for. It really looks like a great solution. So with that then, as we're progressing along, the thing is, you've got to look at, what are the feedback loops? How are you going to progress through this cycle? Because we don't want to go through this linear cycle without really continuing to involve feedback loops. And so feedback loops are a key part of any discovery activity. If you look at the lean startup, the lean startup is really based on ideas of feedback loops. As we start with some hypothesis, observations and hypothesis, we build some experiments, we measure results, and we learn. And so the concept of this type of feedback loop applied on top of the pipeline is a key element really in continuing to discover. Because we have uncertainty, we have some great things we've learned, but you've got to go through. And this is basically the same as a scientific method. You know, the lean startup is really nothing particularly new. It's just put in a good context of product development. Scientific method is a broader perspective as well, which we rely on heavily. The challenge I see, and this is where I say there was that I had come from the product world into the Agile community, and I was seeing that most of the people in the Agile community were not coming from the product world. I was wondering, you know, I got agility straight away because that's how I live from a product perspective. But a lot of people that were coming from IT, and internal IT, were stuck in a different world. They didn't have, and I think the reason for that, really a key part of it is what sort of feedback loops they had. What sort of feedback loops? So in the product world, you have an implicit, you've got a market segment you're going after, you've got some sales, and that's an immediate feedback. We knew, based on revenues, what our funding was going to be, how we could, and so that feedback loop is there all the time. And we're talking to customers, and we're getting feedback from them when they're calling customer support, when we're dealing with them in rollouts and things like that. So we're talking to our customers, we're getting feedback loops all the time. What I've noticed in internal IT, and I was a consumer of internal IT was providing services to me as a product developer, and I was wondering, why is everything so slow? Why am I not even getting, why are they not talking to me? And the reason is, I think, is that there are fences, walls, brick walls sometimes built up within IT, where there are barriers all along. Right? Now, it is totally possible to run an internal IT as a product direction, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are talking about, trying to shift from project to product. You start thinking like a product company because you need those feedback loops. But so many places where you've got problems are oftentimes because of broken feedback loops. And the one that I think, in particular for the India market, is when you're doing an outsourcing type of arrangement and it's all a contract arrangement, it's very easy to have no feedback loops at all and having challenges. So just something to think about in terms of what are your feedback loops? How are you learning? Because without feedback loops, you're not learning. And product development, to me, is all about learning. It's learning and adapting to the market, and to me, that's what agility is also about. So with that, as we start, you know, we're getting a pretty good sense of what direction we want to go. Even without having a product, we started doing some pre-marketing. We started circulating the idea, rolling it out, starting talking about it, started talking about the product at some conferences. Actually, Agile India was one of the places I used to get some of the ideas out, a couple other places. We also talked to our trainers at our Kanban Leadership Retreat. So we start circulating the idea to see if there a buzz around this. There was a lot of buzz around this. So we said, let's go for it. We engaged our marketing team as well. So we're doing this up front. A lot of times I see marketing getting involved late. You know, we delivered the project, now tell us how to position it. Instead, we brought the marketing team in early to say, let's figure out how we're positioning that, because as we're positioning it, might influence how we develop it. So started looking at goals. To position the Kanban method as complementary to Scrum to help managers go further without an overhaul of the process and operations, and position Kanban University as the top destination for training and education to incorporate Kanban into existing Scrum practices. So really putting together the vision, the strategy, the product strategy, what are we going after? Another element of it here is we're not going to try to go after Scrum directly, and it's the incorrect paradigm. Rather, we're taking the position that Kanban makes what you do better, hence the name Scrum Better with Kanban. This is, we're going to make your Scrum better, we're not going to make you change it out. So then we started looking into actually building the product, right? And I know when I was doing development, we'd always, in the early stages, have a nice PowerPoint presentation. We'd say, oh, I wish I had that AI tool that would take my PowerPoint presentation and turn it into code, right? Well, I'm in the inevitable position that my product is a PowerPoint solution, right? So, which means it's good. I can iterate on that very rapidly because I don't have a lot of, it's not a heavyweight solution, but it's still a lot of iteration and it's still a lot of work. It takes time to do that iteration. So we reached out to a few contacts. And again, we tried to make sure we were reaching out to pretty much Scrum practitioners that were not necessarily inside our network. We thought we could get through our network, maybe we'd get a team of 4, we could try a beta program, with them. But we got more than 15, and we said, this is great, because we have enough people now that we can break this up into 2. We were going to do 1, but we said, let's do 2. But let's not run 2 of the same type, because we were starting to have questions, there were some internal doubts in our minds as to how we wanted to build the product. So we said, well, let's do some A/B testing, right? Let's try 2 different variants, an A version and a B version, and let's see which one resonates better. So our initial idea, the A version, we thought, oh, we already have a great tool. We already have a Team Kanban practitioner class. All we need to do is take that Team Kanban practitioner class, make it more Scrum friendly, and we'd be done, right? We've already got something that's good, a 1-day class. Let's turn it, do a little bit of work with it, and translate it to Scrum. We'll be done. But we said, we had another idea, and that other idea was, let's look at, from our market feedback, we've got 2 problem areas. Can we focus on those problems and look at where the challenges are with Scrum, and then use evolutionary change principles to help them through resistance and also applying practice. So it's a little bit more of a problem focus, where A was more of a solution focus, right? Something we already had. And this is another trap we find it. We already got something, let's just push that down and make it work. But this was looking, B was a little bit more customized. So we tried it. We tried A/B testing with that. And what was the result? Well, some of A actually stuck, so that was good. A lot of B stuck. So I'd say we moved more towards B than A. But we also came up with a whole lot of new ideas from that feedback. So that's good. So this is the testing gave us some really good feedback. And we ended up doing this, we ended up running about 3 cycles. And that really helped get us towards product. But even once we sort of got past that stage and into releasing it out to our trainer network then came back with their suggestions. And they improved it quite a bit as well. So we went, continued all along the way, we're continuing to evolve and to get better fit for purpose product. So this continued again for a while. And eventually, if we go back to what we had at our idealized solution, the key is there's feedback all the way through here. This is not a linear process. This is having feedback throughout this, as well as feedback coming back. So it's not like we only did market analysis here. There were times we were doing some market analysis further down this road, and there's times where we're coming back and revalidating. So there's loops all the way through here, right? And you can't ignore those loops. They're very important. I mean, that's how you continue to learn. That's how you continue to evolve. And then overall, as we got this out to the market, we got some more feedback. So this is an ongoing process and continue. Now we have a very, very happy with what we've got now. A very solid product, but we'll continue to evolve it a little bit. So how did it go? I say overall fantastic. Our trainers were ecstatic about it. We got a lot of buzz around it. So it was fastest take-up of our products that we've ever had. Also, in terms of students who have taken it, great feedback from students, and also one of our, probably the fastest growing student rollout that we've had. So it's good. It's going well. The other thing is that we're starting to get some buzz around this, starting to also talk to some partners that might, some large partners that may expand our market. So there's some really good positive that's come from this. And I think it's a tribute to really the effort we put into making it fit for the purpose and identifying that market need. So it's in a down market. Obviously, training has been down the last 2 years, but still it's a bright sign within our organization. So with that, sort of like to end with this perspective of what is agility after all? Why are we having challenges? One of the things that, heard Scott's talk yesterday about, well, Agile is dead. Agile has failed to deliver what we've promised. We've done some challenges with it. And I think that's part of the problem is we haven't been able to really articulate well what Agile means, right? And what is the business looking for. And usually if I ask, well, what's agility to someone who's an Agile coach, almost always they'll come back to, well, something about the Agile Manifesto. And while I love the Agile Manifesto, I don't think it defines agility. And I don't think it speaks to the business of agility. And I think that's one of our problems in this industry, is we're not talking to the people who think like products. The executives think like products. They think in terms of feedback, what am I getting from this, and what do I really want out of this? And so, having myself come from the product world, my take on agility was always this. Agility is the capability to discover and deliver in the face of uncertainty. That's what executives are looking for. They're not looking for conformance to the Agile Manifesto. They don't care about the Agile Manifesto, and they don't care how they get this. Right? If you can't discover and deliver better, you're not actually being Agile at all. I mean, the idea of, I love the idea of the Agile mindset, but I think this is the Agile mindset, right? This is the Agile mindset, not an Agile mindset is formed by the values of the Agile Manifesto and all of that. Those are all great, wonderful things. But if you're not doing this, no one's going to keep you around, right? You want to be still employed, get in this game. So with that, this is my other best definition of agility. This was John Cleese, who's the face in here, known by some as a Monty Python guy, or as a hotelier in Fawlty Towers, or also to the younger generation, Nearly Headless Nick in the Harry Potter series. In the 1980s, he was doing some management videos. And one of those videos was called The Importance of Mistakes. And in his introduction, he tells the story of Gordon the Guided Missile. And to me, this is just a fantastic story, that the essence of agility.
Gordon the Guided Missile sets off in pursuit of its target. It immediately sends out signals to discover if it's on course to hit that target. And the signals come back. No, you are not on course, so change it up a bit and slightly to the left. And Gordon changes course as instructed, and then, rational little creature that he is, he sends out another signal. Am I on course now? And back comes the answer, no. But if you adjust your present course a little bit further up, and a little bit further to the left, then you will be. So he adjusts his course again and sends out another request for information. And back comes the answer, no, Gordon, you've still got it wrong. You must come down a bit and a foot to the right. And the guided missile Gordon the Guided Missile sets off in pursuit of its target. It immediately sends out...
All right, I'm having trouble here with that, so let me just go. But the point is, what matters is, does it hit the target? Right? It doesn't matter how it got there. It doesn't matter that it made mistakes. In fact, it made mistakes to learn, and then it got to its target. And that, to me, is what agility does. Getting delivery of your product that will delight customers, that's fit for purpose for customers. So with that, I'll end. There's plenty of resources if you want to learn more about Kanban. There's the official guide to the Kanban method. There's a number of case studies. This Posit Science is one about a Scrum team that applied Kanban to improve their Scrum. There's obviously the Blue Book. There's a newer edition of that as well. There's the Essential Kanban Condensed, which is a freely available version of, there's the State of Kanban surveys, and plenty more resources available on Kanban University's site. I'm also available for conversations. I'd love to talk to you about either product development or Kanban. And with that, I think we have a little bit of time for questions.
Yep.
So, questions?
Any questions?
So, yeah.
Scrum and Kanban are two different concepts, as I understood, but it has to be employed in tandem with each other so that we get the maximum benefit out of that. But how is it technically possible to do it at the same time?
I was losing you. Can you repeat again?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how can this Kanban approach can be technically applied to a space where Scrum is being applied currently.
Oh, so the approach that we take in applying it is if you were here yesterday, I gave a talk on evolutionary change. So evolutionary change is our approach that we use. And what that means is we look for where can we make small changes and apply various Kanban practices that are appropriate for where the pains you have are. So as you go through and you look and reflect, you look at where are the pains that I'm having. So if my pain is in predictability, for example, we can take small steps or we can take big steps. So many times Scrum teams are particularly wedded to their estimating and planning. So we may not take the big step, which might be to replace that, basically get rid of the estimating and focus more on measurement. Right? So that's where we want to evolve to, but that's a big step, and they may or may not be ready for that big step. So we provide various degrees of approaches for dealing with predictability. So one of the things that we cover in a class on predictability is just first identifying where delays, giving a taxonomy for delay. Because delay is what's killing productivity, both productivity and predictability. If you've got delays in your system, it's going to kill you. You're going to have very poor predictability. So those are areas we can look at. We can just get people, we can take small steps or we can take big steps. But we don't have to install a whole bunch of stuff. It's not like a shift from Scrum to Kanban. It is a start applying Kanban practices on top of what you do now. And another one might be challenges with daily stand-ups, right? And so if the Kanban approach to that is to walk the board. So maybe that's something that can be brought in. Or maybe just unplanned work is another problem that people have. So we have a number of different problem areas that we can identify and fairly clear identification of steps to be taken that can augment existing patterns.
Yeah, thanks, Todd, for insightful session. So, in one of your slides, you were talking about the upstream product pipeline where there were different feedback loops during problem validation, solution validation, and stuff like that. So, when and where you use the metrics to decide that you had chosen the right idea, or it was at the ideation stage itself?
So, all along, we were, in this particular case, we weren't having any quantitative metrics. It was relatively qualitative, I would say. But they were fairly clear directions, right? So we were getting feedback from students, we were getting feedback from trainers all along this stage. And there were certain elements that resonated pretty strongly. And when we rolled it out again, we got very positive feedback in those directions. So basically what we did is anything that was positive feedback, we amplified. Anything that was negative feedback, we dampened, right? And so it's really an issue of dealing with the feedback loop, taking the actions on it, and then, in the end. But yeah, it was something that was fast enough to iterate, and where collection of quantitative data didn't seem necessary. There will be many cases of products where you want to get that quantitative data for sure. But there's a lot of things you can do. As much as we love metrics in the Kanban world, there's an awful lot you can do with qualitative data, with subjective data.
Makes sense. Thank you.
One last question. Well then, thank you, Todd. Thank you so much, Todd, for that wonderful session.
Thank you, everyone.